The boy who became a nation's hope. The Potala Palace in Lhasa towered like a white crown over the city, its 1,000 rooms and crimson roofs glimmering in the thin, high-altitude light. For centuries, it had stood as the heart of Tibetan spirituality and government. Within its sacred halls, the young Dalai Lama began the long journey of education and enlightenment that would prepare him to guide both souls and a nation. At dawn, monks in saffron robes filled the corridors with chants that resonated through the stone walls like a heartbeat. The young Tenzin Gyatso rose each day to the sound of prayer bells and the low hum of mantras. His teachers, venerable scholars steeped in centuries-old traditions, taught him logic, philosophy, Sanskrit poetry, medicine and metaphysics. But beyond these disciplines, they taught him something deeper, the art of compassion and the discipline of the mind. As a child, the Dalai Lama was bright, curious and mischievous. He loved mechanical things and once dismantled an antique clock just to see how it worked. He was fascinated by gadgets, telescopes and even cars, rare curiosities in the secluded world of Tibet. His tutors allowed this curiosity to thrive, seeing in it not rebellion, but the natural expression of an inquisitive mind. Yet amid his studies and play, Tenzin Gyatso carried the awareness that he was more than a student or a child. He was a leader in waiting, burdened with the fate of a nation that was both spiritually rich and politically vulnerable. The Tibet of the 1940s was a land seemingly frozen in time. While the outside world was engulfed in war and revolution, Tibet remained isolated by mountains and by tradition. Its monasteries were centers of learning and devotion, but the machinery of modern governance lagged behind the times. Meanwhile, to the east, the tides of history were turning. China, fractured by civil war between nationalists and communists, was emerging from its own chaos, and both factions, despite their differences, claimed Tibet as part of China. When the young Dalai Lama was just a teenager, emissaries and rumors began to flow into Lhasa. China was changing, and its ambitions would soon reach the high plateau. Even as he continued his spiritual training, studying the scriptures and debating theology with monks twice his age, he sensed a growing unease among his elders. The independence that Tibet had enjoyed for centuries now hung by a thread. In 1950, when Tenzin Gyatso was only 15 years old, the inevitable came to pass. The newly established People's Republic of China, under Mao Zedong, launched an invasion of Tibet. The Chinese army, modern, disciplined and enormous, swept into eastern Tibet, easily overwhelming the poorly equipped Tibetan forces. The news reached Lhasa like a distant storm. Monks and ministers looked to the Dalai Lama, still barely a boy, and realized the time for innocence was over. That same year, under immense pressure and in accordance with ancient tradition, the young Tenzin Gyatso was formally enthroned as both spiritual and political leader of Tibet, years earlier than planned. He was just 15, but he now bore the full responsibility of leading a nation caught between faith and force. In his later writings, he would recall those days with humility and heartbreak. I felt like a bird thrown into the sky, with the duty to fly, though I had never learned how. In the years that followed, the Dalai Lama sought to balance diplomacy and prayer, to protect Tibet's sovereignty without provoking total destruction. He sent delegations to Beijing, appealed to the international community, and prayed for peace. But the world was busy with its own wars and politics. Few were willing to confront Mao's China over a distant mountain kingdom. Still, the Dalai Lama refused to surrender hope. Even as soldiers gathered along Tibet's borders, he devoted his nights to meditation and his mornings to the affairs of state. Those who met him described a rare combination of calmness and courage in his eyes, a teenager, already carrying the composure of a monk and the gravity of a king. By the mid-1950s, however, the situation was deteriorating rapidly. The Chinese government signed the 17-point agreement, claiming to guarantee Tibet's autonomy while establishing Chinese control over its military and foreign affairs. In reality, it was the first step toward occupation. Rebellion simmered in the countryside. Monasteries were searched, monks arrested, and resentment grew. The Dalai Lama, barely in his 20s, faced an impossible dilemma: remain in Lhasa under the shadow of Chinese rule, or flee into exile and risk abandoning his people. The world was watching, but few were listening. Tibet's destiny would soon hinge on one fateful journey under the cover of darkness.